Okay. So you see, hot drawing is another process. We are basically discussing some general metal forming processes, right? That's why we get an idea to understand what do you call this? Yes, the metal forming processes, right? And then we can understand what is hot working and cold working, right? And where is it applicable? So drawing, as it indicates, right? We are trying to draw, right? We will try to uh, at the left end, right? You'll have a tensile force applied. Okay, you'll try to pull it here so that this undrawn bar, which is having a higher cross section, will flow through this die and become what do you call? It turns into a reduced cross section, right? So you're trying to pull it from here. That's the difference. The metal forming process, which uses tensile forces to stretch material, right? Tensile forces applied here. Or drawing above recrystallization temperature, right? As the name suggests, we are trying to perform drawing, hot drawing. So hot working, right? That is above recrystallization temperature. We'll discuss what is recrystallization temperature in depth. But as I said, it is a temperature at which crystals are reforming, right? Temperature where crystals uh, they change and then they reform, right? From previous state to a new state based on the temperature. I'm sorry, the rate of cooling and other environmental conditions. As the various types of process material, you have bar drawing, right? What you're seeing is bar drawing in the diagram. Then you have tube drawing also, right? And wire drawing also. That is basically wires. That is those are very thin, right? Thin members. So all these are categories under drawing, right? And there is another thing called pilgering, right? If you have heard of it, this is also kind of tube drawing, that wherein you reduce the thickness of the tube, right, by applying uh, compressive and tensile forces, right? If you want to look at it, you can look at it. This is kind of a anomalous, we can say, or miscellaneous process, pilgering, right? Now you see the advantages of hot working, right? We have seen all these hot working processes, right? That employ that basically work under hot work when we are actually working at a temperature above recrystallization temperature. So, what are the advantages of this hot working processes or hot working in general? That you, when you work above the recrystallization temperature, the advantages that we get are following: hardness and ductility of the material is not changed, right? So hardness will not be changed and ductility will not be changed, because unlike cold working, where you are working below the recrystallization temperature, there is a change in hardness and ductility because of the dislocations, right? The material is not soft enough and you're trying to deform it. So there is more resistance by the material, and therefore the ductility will change and the hardness will change. But here, because the temperature is high, the metal, the metal becomes soft, right? As comparison with cold working, the material is soft here, and therefore you're able to easily mold it, right? Be it drawing or forging or any other process, you're able to form it easily, right? Second point is porosity is eliminated. You don't have porosity problem because all those what do you call holes, etc., would be firstly there will be recrystallization, right? So that would also eliminate that problem. And other thing is you are trying to form what do you call apply some forces, etc., when you're hot working. So that will also eliminate the porosity. So basically voids, etc. Grain structure of the material, I'm sorry, the metal, grain structure of the metal is refined and physical properties are improved, right? Grain structure is refined, that is no doubt, because you are trying to have recrystallization first, right? And then the fact that you are trying to have that heat treatment also. That is, you're trying to slow down the rate of cooling, right? The rate of cooling is slow. So that also refines the grain structure, and physical properties are also improved because of the grain structure. Because physical properties or mechanical properties, they depend on the grain structure. Physical properties in the sense density and what do you call density and well, there is even this what do you call specific weight, is it density, and there is another material physical property that is more common, right? So they are improved. Other thing is large shape changes are possible without ruptures because material is soft. That's the point, right? So you're able to change the shape much without what do you call much forces required, and therefore, if those changes are possible, they are also possible without ruptures, right? Unlike cold working, the material could fail because it is not in a state of uh, moldable state. It offers more resistance, as we know, because it is at a lower temperature. But here, because it is at a higher temperature, you are able to mold it, right? Be it forging or hot drawing, etc., without rupture. That is, without breaking, right? Without failure, in one sense. And smaller, faster acting machines, right? That is, I mean, based on the equipment that we're using. Impurities are broken up and distributed throughout the material, right? Because if you consider all those processes like forging, etc., you're trying to have dispersion, or what do you call uh, the material will be dispersed in one sense, right? So therefore, the impurities are broken up when even when you are trying to perform those processes after the temperature is increased, they'll be broken up and they'll be distributed throughout the material. Unlike as in casting, when it was casted, there would be impurities at certain spots, hot spots. But now, because we are undergoing, I mean, subjecting it to mechanical forces after increasing the temperature, they will be distributed impurities. Surfaces need not be clean and scale free, right? So because we are increasing the temperature, and that would lead to what you call that will avoid this kind of problem, right? As for the disadvantages, metal loss due to high temperature and rapid oxidation or scale formation takes place during process, right? So oxidation could be one issue because in cold working, because the temperature is not much, the oxidation problem does not what do you call gives us uh, a significant problem in one sense. So here there is a chance of oxidation because of the high temperature. Weakening of surface due to metal loss, right? Because as you're forming it, right, there will be material flowing, right, from one place to another. So the surface would be weakened in the sense that you're trying to have either in the die that it would be contacting the die, the outer surfaces of the material would be contacting the die, and in case of forging also it will contact the punch, etc. So that is what is responsible for that point. This weakening may cause fatigue failures also. We know what is fatigue, right? That is when a component is subjected to reversible loads. So that becomes more probable when you have this weakening, right? Because if the surface is weakened, then the crack would appear on the surface because of the reversible loads, right? Close tolerances cannot be maintained here because temperature is high, expansion or contraction, right? Basically expansion because metals expand on heating. So that would also lead to not being able to maintain these close tolerances. High cost of cooling for some processes, high temperature and high energy consumption, right? Cooling is high in the sense that temperature would be the what do you call the need for increasing the temperature or the source of increasing the temperature would cost and therefore the high energy consumption, right? Cold working. As for cold working, you see plastic deformation which is carried out in a temperature region and over a time interval such that the strain hardening is not relieved, right? It's called cold working. So that strain hardening we have talked about, right? This is why I discussed that topic earlier. In cold working, the strain hardening is not relieved because the temperature is not high, right? You're working at lower temperatures, so the dislocations would pile up, right? As we had seen in the explanation of strain hardening. So because they're not relieved, the material would have a lot of stress, right? But still we are able to form it. So the plastic deformation which is carried out in a temperature region and over a time interval such that the strain hardening is not relieved. That is a major point, significant distinguishing point. Cold working produces additional dislocations within the metal structure, as I said. Initially, the dislocations can move through the metal structure, right? They're able to move. Now, but as the working continues, however, the movement of the dislocations become more difficult, as I said, right? Because of strain hardening, more and more dislocations pile up and the material would not flow that easy as the working continues. So now the metal becomes less malleable and ductile, right? So what properties does this cold working affect, right? It affects the tensile strength. Basically, it increases the tensile strength, right? Because of the more dislocations, the materials become, they have more strength in one sense. And you have hardness, right? Because of the pileup of dislocations, right? They become hard. And hardness is basically resistance to deformation, right? Yield strength would be high. The point where it starts yielding is also high because of the plastic deformation, right? And of course the dislocations. So all those points you can relate to dislocations. All those dislocations piling up one after the other. That is what is. And if you want to go more technical, the slip planes, right? You might learn this in your engineering materials. These fundamentals of engineering materials about this slip planes. So that and even ductility is also affected, right? Because it becomes more brittle because of the dislocations and the stresses inside. Now the effects of cold working on yield and tensile strength. You see, as then cold working increases, right? As I was talking about, tensile strength also increases, right? So that's the relation. But you can see the difference. Tensile strength does not vary much with percentage of cold working, right? But yield strength vary a lot. Like initially it varies quite a lot. You can see there is a drastic increase of yield strength initially, right? But after a certain point of what do you call it, a certain percentage of cold working is achieved, after that point there's not much change in the strength, right? Because initially, as I said, the dislocation would be piling up, the stresses would be more. But as we move along, right, more and more cold working as you do, the change of yield strength is not much, the change of tensile strength is not much because all what strain hardening, the strain hardening that have happened, it has happened and there's not much that the material can resist now. So therefore, they're in place and that strength would not increase much after maybe let's say 40 or 50%, right? As we can see. As for strength, hardness, and ductility, right? If you just want to measure the strength as in general, hardness and ductility as well. So you see, as we had seen there, amount of cold work or percentage of cold work, your strength increases, we had seen, hardness increases, right? We know ductility decreases, right? Because they are not synonymous. These two are synonymous. Ductility is opposite of what you call hardness or brittleness, right? So ductility decreases. as we do more and more cold work. So this is, if this is the original structure, you see we are even comparing the microstructure. If this is the original structure, microstructure, then here after cold working, you see the grains have aligned based on the what do you call, the type of cold working in one sense. That, for example, if you are trying to stretch the material, then the grain would also stretch in that format, right? So that is why you can see those elongated grains, right? Either it is subjected to extrusion or drawing, right, etc. You see cold working methods, some of the popular cold working methods, that these processes, these methods will have, you'll have to go for cold work, not hot work, right? We will not go for those because of the following reasons, right? You see cold rolling, we have drawing, we have deep drawing, right? This is common for the sheet metal industry, and pressing as well. Will not increase the temperature to a regriddation temperature, will be within that, right? As you can see here, you're trying to have basically rolling, right? Cold rolling. This example is cold rolling, that you are rolling at a lesser temperature and not at a higher temperature, like hot working. So because of the stresses, because of the friction, the surface would be red. They're increase in temperature, right? So some water cooling setup here to reduce its temperature, right? So both because of the friction of the rollers, and the metal is also raised to some temperature, right? As we have seen, although it is not more near to the recrystallization, but it is less than that. But it still is more than the room temperature, right? Drawing of a metal, as we have seen, even this can be carried out under cold working conditions. Deep drawing, as I said, this is your sheet, right? The one you are seeing in light blue color, sky blue color. The green one is your punch, and this is your die, bottom one. So once the punch presses it, this sheet will take the shape of the punch, and it will move down the die. So this happens under cold working conditions. Why do we go for cold working? There is good dimensional control, right? The dimensional control that we can achieve is more here because the temperature is not much. So handling problems, etc., are not there, and even we can, we don't have much variation in the dimensions because of the lesser temperature. Good surface finish of the component here, right? Strength and hardness of the metal are increased, as we know. An ideal method for increasing hardness of those metals is to not respond to the heat treatment. You see, for those materials, you could, for improvement of properties such as hardness, you could even go for heat treatment processes, right? We are yet to discuss those, but there are heat treatment processes like annealing, normalizing, tempering. All these are responsible for improving the properties of the metal or material whichever is being worked on. So if they do not respond to the heat treatment, there are certain materials which are not feasible. I mean, you cannot change their grain structure or workability because of the, just by heat treatment. So this cold working is an ideal method for increasing the hardness of such metals, right? That's what is mentioned. So why not cold working? Because only ductile metals can be shaped through cold work, right? Brittle materials cannot be shaped, right? Because of the reason that they will not be able to withstand those dislocations. They will fail. Because ductile materials are able uh, to be shaped properly, right? Because of the ductility, as simple. So only ductile metals can be shaped through cold working, and that is basically a limitation, right? Overworking of metal, that it could be overworked also, leading to rupture, etc. Subsequent heat treatment is mostly needed, right? Once you have cold work, because there are stresses, residual stresses, and inside, because of the cold working, you will have to go for heat treatment, subsequent heat treatment after this cold work. So that comes off as kind of a drawback. How do you calculate cold work? You take this formula, like percentage of cold work. For example, if it is the cross section that is reducing, right? Then A0 is your original area, AD is the area after deformation, right? So you take the change in the area divided by the original area, right? That's how you get percentage. Change divided by the original figure multiplied by 100. That gives you the percentage of cold working done. So more is the change in the area, difference of area, more is the percentage of cold work. So percentage cold work is a measure of degree of plastic deformation, isn't it? More is the cold working percentage, more is the degree of plastic deformation. 50%, if we compare it with a 70% cold working, then we say the plastic deformation achieved in 70% of cold work material is more than 50% of cold work material. I hope that is clear. Cold working. Now, as for hot working, it involves deformation above recrystallization temperature, right? Between 0.5 to 0.75 pm. PM is your melting temperature, right? Melting temperature of the metal concerned, right? Whichever is under consideration. The advantages of hot working. Okay. So the advantages of hot working, as we have seen, there is significant plastic deformation, right? Significant change in workpiece shape. We are able to achieve lower forces are required because of the softening of metal due to high temperature. Materials with premature failure can be hot formed, right? Those which fail earlier, I mean, if you subject them to cold working, they will fail, right? So you have to undergo hot working. I mean, such kind of metals. Absence of strengthening due to work hardening, right? It doesn't strengthen. There's not much increase in the strength because there is no work hardening or strain hardening, right? Unlike cold working. So therefore, you have this absence of strengthening. Disadvantages: shorter tool life because of the temperatures involved, poor surface finish, right? Oxidation, etc. Reasons. Lower dimensional accuracy, right? Temperature, because of the temperature increase, you're not able to control the dimensions of the workpiece. Sample surface oxidation, right? As I have discussed, it may undergo oxidation because of the temperature increase. As for cold working, as we have discussed, it's generally done at room temperature. So basically, you're trying to summarize hot working and cold working. Okay, it's generally done at room temperature or slightly above room temperature, right? But it will be well below the recrystallization temperature. That is for sure. Advantages compared to hot forming: it has closer tolerances that can be achieved, right? As I said, because of the, because of not working at higher temperatures. Good surface finish can be achieved because of strain hardening. Higher strength and hardness is seen, as we have seen in that graph. There's an increase of strength and hardness. Grain flow during deformation provides the opportunity for desirable directional properties. So if you want to have certain directional properties that, for example, among X, Y, and Z, you want properties to be more strong or more, resistant in the Z direction, let's say. How do you do that? You manipulate the grain flow, right? So if you're able to manipulate the grain flow in such a manner that you can reflect this in the properties, then that is possible here in cold work, right? Because they're able to manipulate the grain flow, right? Upon subjecting it to drawing or forging or whatever process it is, you're able to manipulate the grain flow, and therefore this provides the opportunity for desirable directional properties. As I said, for a particular direction, you can have more strength as compared to the other directions or axes, etc. Since no heating of the work is involved, furnace, fuel, electricity costs are minimized, right? As we have seen, unlike hot working wherein you have high energy consumption, this does not require heating, so therefore all these costs are minimal. As for machining requirements, they are minimum, resulting in possibility of near net shape forming, right? Because after cold working, it is not generally required to do machining. So with this process itself, or whatever process that is employed, you are able to achieve near net shape forming, that is near to the actual shape. So you don't require secondary operations after this. Post secondary operations is what we call them. As for disadvantages, you see higher forces and power are required, right? Because of working at low temperature, the material is somewhat uh, hard, it has more strength, right? It offers more resistance, and therefore higher forces and power are required. Strain hardening of the work metal limits the amount of forming that can be done, right? Because as I said, we cannot strain harden infinitely. There is a limit to it. So therefore, the strain hardening, it limits the amount of forming that can be done. So it is not that you can achieve a lot of forming beyond the threshold limit. No, the limit is determined by the strain hardening that can be achieved on the work metal, right? So that limits our forming ability, how much we can form. Sometimes cold forming, annealing, cold forming cycle should be followed. So basically, it's a cycle. After cold forming, you have to go for annealing and then cold forming again. Why? Why not go for cold forming and then again cold forming? Because there will be stresses inside. They have to be relieved, right? There are dislocations because of strain hardening. So because of that, you have stresses inside. So if you cold form once and then again you cold form, there are stresses inside again, right, from the previous process. So then the material would fail upon when you subject it to second cold forming cycle. So you have to relieve those stresses. How do you do that? You do it with a heat treatment process. It could be annealing, it could be normalizing, it could be tempering, but basically a heat treatment process. So this cycle has to be followed in cold working. If you want to cold work more and more, you have to ensure that the stresses inside are not much so that the material does not rupture, right? The metal does not rupture. How to avoid? You form or you can follow this cycle. You have to have a heat treatment process between two consecutive cold forming cycles. The workpiece is not ductile enough to be cold work, right? If the workpiece is not ductile enough, then I'm sorry. I mean, for those which are ductile, as I said, they can only be cold work, right? If you cannot go for cold working with a brittle material, right? As for the effects of cold working, a small percentage of the energy expended in plastically deforming a material remains stored in the metal as an increase in internal energy, right? So that plastical deformation, right? Plastic deformation, that is basically what it is. The energy given by the what do you call cold working equipment is stored in the metal as an increase in internal energy. So there is still some, because of the dislocations there, those are carrying energy, right? So that the energy expended, right, in plastic deforming that material, it remains stored as an increase in internal energy. As that's what we call it, right? That is stored between the bonds. Changes are produced in both its physical and mechanical properties, right, because of cold working. Principally, there's a marked increase in hardness and electrical resistivity with the amount of cold work. So, notable properties that have increased are hardness and electrical resistivity also, right? Because that is based on the density and the grain flow, etc. Microstructurally, this increment in internal energy is associated with an increase in the dislocation density, as well as the density of point defects, such as vacancies and interstitials. So, this internal energy increase is associated with an increase in the dislocation density, right? As I told you, the energy is stored because, through dislocations, right? Those dislocations, the planes which are sliding, they are carrying the energy inside them, right? It is because of their carrying of energy that the material was able to dislocate out of shear planes, etc. So that's where the energy is stored. And also the density of point defects, right? More and more point defects as they form, more and more vacancies and interstitial they form. They, what do you call, they're able to store the internal energy, or increase of all these parameters leads to increase in internal energy. That is one way to see it. At a more macro structural level, the grains become markedly elongated, as we have seen in the previous slides, in the direction of working, and heavily distorted, right? They'll be distorted firstly because of the application of different forces in different directions, and also the fact that you have uh, elongation, right, the, of those grains. So that, and so that is another observation. This distortion is evident from a bending of annealing twins and from unevenness in etching caused by local strain inhomogeneities, right? So if inhomogeneities, in the sense you do not have a same what you call microstructure, right? So that there will be some interstitials, some impurities, etc. So that distortion is evident from this, I mean, bending of annealing twins, basically microstructurally. This can be seen microstructurally, those twins and linkers, and from unevenness in etching caused by local strain inhomogeneities. So etching is what they do to, what do you call, have that microstructure revealed, right? Now you see, I've laid a background for heat treatment process, right? The reason why I kept that slide and explained you hot working and cold working first is because we know that you require some kind of heat treatment process in between two cold working processes we've discussed. So how do you do that heat treatment process? We have a process called annealing, right? This is not exactly there in your syllabus, but it will be helpful for us to understand the next concept, that is, or the next topic, that is recovery, recrystallization, and grain growth, right? How does a material recover? Basically, microstructurally, how, what is recovery, what is recrystallization, and what is grain growth? We'll see through the lens of this annealing process, right? In one sense, okay? I'm being figurative. While the increased hardness and strength that result from the working operation can be important, it is often necessary to return the metal to its original condition, right? Initial condition, by annealing. So this heat treatment process tries to return the metal to its initial condition. And why has it changed? Because there is increase in the hardness and strength. We have seen after cold working, the materials undergo dislocations, the dislocation and densities increase, and therefore the hardness and strength increase because of the strain hardening, etc. So all these have to be relieved now. The stress has to be relieved. How do you do that? You do annealing, right? We'll see what is annealing. This usually means holding the cold work metal at a temperature about 1/3 of the absolute melting point for a period of time.